It's wonderful to be here in Peru to talk about innovation and to recognise that innovation is the key to success for every country, for every business, everywhere in the world. You mentioned the mining industry. Mining is a very old business, but it is a very innovative business. The miners that are successful, and that includes our leading Australian mining companies, including those who are operating so successfully in South America, are at the cutting edge of technology. We have, in Australia, we have driverless trains, remote-controlled vehicles. The levels of automation are increasing all the time, and that is one of the reasons why Australian mining companies have been able, in a very tough commodity market when the cycle turned against them, to remain competitive and indeed to remain profitable. So we shouldn't, just because an industry is an old industry, agriculture I guess is even older, there too you see remarkable innovation, particularly in the area of water management and soil science. And again, this is a key part of our Australian experience. But just dealing with the issue of innovation at a higher level, if you accept, and I think we must, that the tenor of our times is change at a pace and scale unprecedented in human history, then it follows that if you are going to be successful or remain successful, to remain competitive, you have to be innovative. And that requires cultural change as well as more conventional leadership. It requires organisations, whether they are government departments, whether they are governments, whether they are big companies or indeed small companies, to be much more open to doing things in different ways. Courtesy is always important, but deference can be very dangerous if it's overdone. Not invented here is a very, very dangerous attitude to take, and it's all too prevalent. Because of that pace of change too, we see enormous disruption in industries, and it can create, of course, job losses as industries are overtaken, as technology overtakes and in many cases replaces jobs. Now, there is often a tendency to blame job losses of this kind on globalisation or indeed free trade. For the most part, these changes are driven by technological change, in particular the rise of automation. And our colleague from Newtonomy no doubt will talk about that in much more detail. But if you accept that with technological change you are going to see changes with businesses that result in job losses, that result in those opportunities no longer existing, then you need to have strong economic growth to create the new opportunities. You can't just say, stop the world, I want to get off, let's just freeze technology. That's not going to happen. So it's critical that the government, and returning to my role as Prime Minister, that the government promote innovation and do everything it can to encourage it. So we talk about it a lot, and that is important because cultural change is important. We've set out as one of my first initiatives as Prime Minister was an innovation and science agenda, to put innovation, education and science right at the very heart of everything we do. And so we are promoting greater STEM education in schools. This has been one of the areas where I think in most countries, while the opportunities in STEM have been increasing, we've seen fewer students studying STEM subjects, including fewer studying at university, and indeed in particular, and this is relevant to what Christine Lagarde was talking about earlier about the empowerment of women in the economy. We've seen a real decline in many countries, including the United States and Australia, of female participation in STEM subjects at university. And that is a genuine market failure that has to be addressed. So we have to promote that. We have to also promote entrepreneurship, and that requires us cutting away, as we've been doing systematically in Australia, as much red tape and regulation as we can. We want to do everything we can to make it easier to start a business. We want to make it easier for people to find the capital to start a new, riskier business, a startup. And so we've provided new tax incentives for the early stage of investment, where we felt there is genuinely a market failure. We don't think that there is a problem with businesses when they're getting to the point where they want to raise $100 million or $200 million, but at that very early stage, it has been harder than it need be, and so we have provided some real incentives there. Another critical element that I think we have to recognise is the importance of education, not simply as a means of giving people the skills that they need to realise their full potential, but as educational institutions, and in particular universities and other higher educational institutions, as being real drivers of economic growth. They are economic engines. And so the co-location of businesses, particularly innovative ones, with universities, with that collaboration between primary research in the university and, of course, applied research and its counterpart in industry is critically important. We've seen so many good examples of that. I was just a few days ago in Geelong, in Victoria and Australia, seeing yet another example of great collaboration between Deakin University and, in that case, the healthcare, but previously a company that has the world's leading carbon technology for making wheel rims. Similarly, Monash University, also in Victoria, has got a similar biomedical discovery precinct. And, of course, you know, the Silicon Valley story is well known to all of us. So education and collaboration is vital. So again, we've identified that in Australia we do a lot of things very well, but one thing we have not done well enough is collaborative work between researchers in the universities and business and industry. And so we're providing new incentives to make sure that more research is done in collaboration with industry. But in summary, the fact is, we know what we have to do. We have to ensure that our nations, our businesses, our cultures are much more innovative. That is the key to maintaining strong economic growth. If you don't have that strong economic growth, then the consequences of the inevitable technological disruption or disruption caused by technology will be much more severe. So those who resist innovation are not defending themselves against the consequences of technological change. They're making themselves vastly more vulnerable to it.